So my question is, why is it that you need to create an entirely new subcommittee when you literally could go through and do whatever work it is that you're talking about handing over to the gentle lady? Y'all had a chance. You chose not to use it. So why should the American people be convinced that now all of a sudden, because you create a new committee that has been promulgated to find some people that actually care about their constituents? And honestly, whenever y'all are ready to work, we on this side of the aisle have always been ready to do what is right by the American people.
Trump just got absolutely demolished by Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, and his response is exactly what you'd expect. A full-on toddler meltdown. She called him a predator, frauder, and cheat straight to his face, and he had zero comeback. Did you see how she compared his indictments to Pokemon cards? We've got the full breakdown of her savage takedown and his pathetic all-caps social media rant that followed. Trump's face turned redder than his tie when she started bringing up those receipts. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Ever seen someone destroy a former president so completely they need to file an insurance claim? That's exactly what happened when Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett went off on Trump. Most politicians tiptoe around Trump like he's a sleeping bear, but Crockett walked right up and poked him with a stick made of pure facts. While your typical Washington insider might dance around calling Trump what he really is, Crockett had no such hesitation.
This is very simple. We right now have a white supremacist that is sitting in the White House. He is backed up by other white supremacists. And if you really want to know who the criminals are in this country, you can Google it. You don't have to trust me. Tearing our democracy down physically. And now we have them tearing us down right here from within. But the people that commit 80% of the most violent crimes in this country are white supremacists. Yet for whatever reason, they sit and they serve at the pleasure of the president. They are the ones that were there on January 6th.
She labeled him exactly what many Americans have been thinking, a predator, frauder, and cheat who's been living the American nightmare while constantly playing the victim card. It's like watching someone finally call out the school bully who's been claiming he's the one being picked on. But where Crockett really shined was in her creative takedowns. She turned Trump's growing collection of indictments into a Pokemon reference, suggesting he treats legal troubles like he's gotta catch them all. She even joked he should get a punch card where the 10th felony comes free. The perfect blend of humor and brutal truth.
Here's the reality for me. I don't think that really anyone should have decided that they should supplant their own judgment on an 80-year-old black man. And, you know, this is someone who lived through the civil rights era and saw the dogs and saw the hoses and saw the police bludgeon and bloody people. As the president decided to get up there and lie, as we know he always does, and say that he had a mandate. We know that he did not run on this idea of cutting out Medicaid.
And don't get me started on her takedown of those so-called perfect phone calls Trump is always bragging about. Crockett pointed out something so obvious yet so brilliant. Normal people don't have to keep explaining why their conversations aren't crimes. That's not exactly a regular Tuesday for most Americans. When it came to the classified document scandal, Crockett didn't pull any punches either. She compared Trump to a toddler caught red-handed with crayons all over the wall, still claiming, what crayon? I don't even know what crayons are. Anyone who's dealt with a 3-year-old can appreciate the accuracy of that comparison. Trump's alleged wealth wasn't safe either. Crockett nailed his financial flip-flopping, saying he acts rich enough to buy the moon until a judge asks him to pay up. Then suddenly the bank account goes mysteriously empty. Funny how that works. Perhaps most damning was when she connected the dots between Trump and white supremacists, noting they sit and serve at the pleasure of the president and were actively involved in tearing our democracy down on January 6th. That's not just a political disagreement. That's a fundamental threat to American values.
That's what's happening right now. I am tired of the white tears. Listen, if you are competent, you are not concerned. When I walk into Congress every single day, you know why I don't feel a way and why you can't make me doubt who I am?
Really is not partisan. I know that it looks very partisan, but at the end of the day, we know that the cuts that the Republicans are proposing, that these cuts are not only going to impact Democrats and independents, but Republicans as well.
There is no comparison. And that is the life that we have always lived. So the only people that are crying are the mediocre white boys that have been beaten out by people that historically have had to work so much harder.
When Crockett finished connecting Trump to white supremacists, our orange friend didn't respond with facts or denials. He went nuclear in the most Trumpy way possible. There's something about powerful black women that turns his normal all-caps rage into a complete grammar-free meltdown. You've seen those moments when someone gets so mad they start typing like they're having a seizure on their keyboard? Well, that's exactly what happened after Crockett's verbal beatdown. Trump couldn't handle being called out by someone who brought actual receipts to the fight, so he resorted to his classic move, screaming into the digital void like a toddler who just had his iPad taken away.
The American people, and to make sure that we keep the American people safe. And if we don't get something done, as they talk about the border, I do want to be clear, the only reason we haven't gotten funding for the border is because they killed the bill that they actually sent us from the Senate side. If they want to do some work, let me tell you something. The Democrats are ready, and it seems like the Senate Republicans are ready too. They just need to get to it and stop peddling Putin's lies. You know, what is wild to me is that this word patriot seems to be getting co-opted for propagandists, because that's what they do.
His social media response was a masterclass in how not to handle criticism. Instead of addressing a single point Crockett made, Trump went straight for personal attacks, calling her a predator, frauder, and cheat. Which is pretty rich coming from a guy who's collecting criminal indictments like their limited edition MAGA hats. The all caps tantrum was particularly telling. It's what happens when someone with the emotional regulation of a 2-year-old gets access to a phone. What's especially hilarious about Trump's meltdown is how predictable it was. Whenever he's confronted by strong women, especially women of color, his go-to move isn't to debate their points, but to try and bully them into silence. The problem for Trump this time: Crockett isn't someone who gets intimidated by a guy shouting nonsense from his social media playpen. Even funnier was watching Trump's supporters scramble to defend him. They had the impossible job of trying to counter actual facts with memes and mockery. They shared angry GIFs while Crockett had shared court documents and public records. It's like bringing a pool noodle to a gunfight. Entertaining, but utterly ineffective. The whole episode perfectly illustrates Trump's playbook when backed into a corner. Step 1, ignore the actual criticism. Step 2, attack the critic personally. Step 3, claim you're being witch hunted. Step 4, hope your followers don't notice you never actually addressed the original points. It's the political equivalent of setting off a smoke bomb and running away. What Jasmine Crockett did represents a seismic shift in how politicians handle Trump. While most lawmakers historically tippy-toe around him like he's a sleeping bear with nuclear launch codes, Crockett brought a whole new energy to the political arena. According to political analysts, her confrontation marks a significant moment in political discourse, signaling a fresh wave of representatives willing to challenge Trump's narrative without flinching. The days of Trump bulldozing through press conferences unchallenged seem to be fading. More politicians are following Crockett's example, showing up with stacks of facts instead of vague complaints. It's like watching someone bring an encyclopedia to a food fight. Unexpectedly effective. As Trump continues his familiar victim routine, his old tactics are losing power. When confronted with actual facts, all he can do is throw a digital temper tantrum that makes toddlers look mature by comparison. The Shadow Realm has a new resident, and his name is Donald.